G'day everyone, my name is Tom Campbell. Great to have your company this evening. I'm the driving announcer at 4RO. Thank you so much, first of all, for attending tonight and to everyone who's watching online. This is a really important part of the electoral process, and to have all the candidates here tonight for the seat of Rockhampton, I'm really thankful for, and I think we all are as well. No one's here to see me tonight, but I just do want to acknowledge a few people who, without this wouldn't be possible tonight. So Dales White, who is our new breakfast announcer, here tonight, and the rest of my team back at 4RO. Trish Bowman and the rest of her team at CQ today. The CQU for letting us host here tonight. Levi Appleton, who's our videographer for the night. Pat Law Security for providing security for everyone tonight. Everyone who emailed Trish or myself, called me on air with questions for these debates. And most importantly, I want to thank the candidates, no matter who wins. We wish you all the very best, and that's why we're here, because we all just want the best outcomes for the region that we love. First of all, I'm going to explain how tonight will work. Each candidate will get 3 minutes to introduce themselves and outline why they want to run for the seat of Rockhampton. And then I've got 5 questions prepared by a committee, including myself and Trish, which they have been prepped for, and then 5 questions from the community. And they'll each get 2 minutes to answer those questions, followed by a 1 minute outro at the end. So very first up, Margaret Strelo.
We were told 2 minutes, by the way. Most of you already know me. I'm Margaret Strelo, and I'm seeking your support to be your independent candidate for Rockhampton and Gracemere. I served as Mayor for over 16 years, and in that time I believe I helped change the face of our city. Many of the things that you have seen change in our community over the last decade or so are things that I helped to bring about, and I helped to make Gracemere a better place for families. I initiated and championed things like the riverbank and the art gallery, and our great parks, Kershaw Gardens, Cedric Archer Park, the Mount Archer Park up there. I also was very much involved in Rocky Nats and establishing that here, initiating and establishing that, as well as River Festival. Now I'm asking for your support to be your representative in Parliament, to champion Rockhampton and Gracemere on the floor of Parliament. I want to be your advocate to government departments when things aren't going as well for you as they might do. I understand how the political process works. I've been around long enough to have a good understanding of policy, but I'm not naive and I'm not hardened by politics. If our community keeps doing the same thing, we will keep getting the same result. Labor has not been good for us. Our loyalty has meant that we are the forgotten children. And if we vote LNP, then we're swapping one party for another. Our hospitals and our schools need an advocate. We have fallen behind in so many ways. The big dollars being spent locally are the pipeline, which takes the Fitzroy water to Gladstone, and the ring road that bypasses our city. We need more infrastructure projects that don't erode our future. We need new jobs and economic prosperity. We need homes that we can afford to live in. We need to feel safe. We need our hospital to work properly. And when we want to hit the road, we need that road to be up to standard. And Gracemere deserved a high school many, many years ago, and I'm proud of the role that I played in bringing that about. I'm 100% committed to our interests, to your interests, and will be answerable only to you. We need independents like me to make a path to break the stranglehold that the parties have. Thank you.
Next up is Donna Kirkland for the LNP.
Thank you. Well, I am a local business owner and have been a business owner now for over 30 years, and recently served a term in the local government council as a councillor representing Division 7. My portfolios there were water and environment. I have a very large family. I have 6 children and I have 17 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. One of the things that are important to a community are family. When we sit around the kitchen table, we start talking about the things that matter to us, the things that make our community. When we sat around our table, we started talking about the problems, about the issues, things like crime, the rising level of crime, things like access to health services when you need them, things like the housing crisis, people sleeping in cars, sleeping in tents on the streets. As a child, I sat around the same kitchen table, but not as the parent, as the child. My father said to me, if you want to talk about problems, you'd better be willing to put your hand up and be a part of the solution. As a counsellor, I did a lot of door knocking. And when I was door knocking those people, our community, that's you. You were not talking to me about roads, rates and rubbish. The community were talking to me about health, access to health when they need it. They were talking to me about crime. They were talking about rising levels of youth crime. We need to do something about that. They were talking to me about housing. They were talking to me about cost of living. All of these things are important to every single family that sits around a kitchen table today. And I've stepped up as a part of the LNP team because the LNP have the right plan for Queensland's future. Now, I stand with that party to deliver on those things that the community currently sit around their kitchen table and talk about. My name is Donna Kirkland and I am your LNP candidate for the seat of Rockhampton. I look forward to serving every single one of you and to delivering on those things that matter to you.
Next up, we have Freddie Johnson from Family First.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is a great pleasure and privilege for me to come here and represent a Family First. I'm born and raised in India, and English is not my first language. Actually, I started to learn English when I was 25. So if you make any mistake, please forgive me. I learned one thing through my observation. The world, the leadership is changing. You know, sometimes I know I am competing with all these politicians. I don't know how many people actually notice that. Google, YouTube, all the World Bank, all these major corporations, the leadership is changing. You have an idea because this is where the traditional politician to be act. Because one thing is lacking is a trust and transparency. Actually, a few months ago, I had a Zoom meeting with the major global leaders. I spent some money to understand what is that. Now, people are actually losing the trust. People hate politicians. Why? Because they're liars. If you want to be a good politician, you need to twist your tongues and you need to learn how to tell lies. So what I'm going to do that, I'm going to be 100% transparency, build the trust. Even if anything I want to achieve in Rockhampton, I can do anything. None of them, they can do anything. That is the reality, you know that. How will we do that? Build that relationship, build that trust. Trust in the Canberra, trust in Queensland, trust in local council, and make available, say, this is, we need that, and how we fix this problem. So that is approach I do. My leadership strategy is entirely different. People ask me why you put your name as a candidate. You know, I'm not trying to change any Rockhampton or change the world. The more I discover, the reason is that I love people. I'm passionate about people. I like helping people. I used to help homeless people in New Zealand. Still, I know how many homeless actually in Rockhampton. Not for this election, because that's my nature. So I was thinking, I want to discover myself. So the more I discover myself, I can manifest and people can be benefited. So I asked God, what I'm going to do? So I work hard. I worked hard when I was 5 years old with my dad. Pretty much I got some free time. I thought, something I want to contribute this world. And maybe it's a politics, I just step in. And if people like me, I will do it. And if you don't like me, that's fine. I will find something else. But still, I love people and I fall in love with people. Also, I like to bring a Judeo-Christian values in this nation. This country was built on a Judeo-Christian values. Some people don't appreciate that. And that's what I want to say. My time is run up. And thank you, and God bless Australia.
Thank you, Freddie. Next up, we have Craig Marshall from the Labor Party.
Thanks, Tom. My name's Craig Marshall. I'm the Labor candidate for Rockhampton. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I moved here with Mum and Dad when I was 11 because Dad had secured various mining contracts in the community. I attended the Bersica Street State High School and then from there went to the North Rocky High. After completing my studies at North Rocky High, I did an apprenticeship in electronics and later on started my own small business selling and servicing office equipment in the community. 10 years later on, I moved into healthcare, where I have been for the past 18 years. I've also previously worked at various mine sites throughout the region. So I understand how important mining is to our economy. I also understand that we need to look at our carbon emissions and reduce those. So there needs to be a fine balance between having mining for our economy and looking after our environment. And I think the Labor Party's got some very good policies around that. I'm also an active volunteer in the community. I've previously volunteered for Camp Quality. I'm an active volunteer at the Fitzroy Gracemere Sharks Rugby League Club and a volunteer for Capricorn Animal Aid. My wife and I are also foster carers and we have a good understanding of the at-risk youth in our community. You may ask me, why did I choose Labor? I chose Labor because when Campbell Newman, along with David Crisafulli, were in government last time, they sacked 14,000 workers. Those workers weren't just sacked. There was boxmen that came to their table and said, it's your turn. And they had to pack that box and leave right then. There was people playing duck, duck, goose. And if you're the goose, you're out. I don't want to see that again in our community. I'm with Labor because I know that Labor looks after people. They look after jobs. They look after our cost of living. You've seen the cost of living relief that we're delivering. Our energy rebates, our rego discounts, our free TAFE, our free kindy. That's what good Labor governments do. And Margaret mentioned some projects that she championed as mayor. Those projects were all funded by good Labor governments. We're talking about the Cedric Archer Park in Gracemere. We're talking about the lookout at Mount Archer. We're talking about the art gallery. You know, the Key Street upgrade was all funded by good Labor governments. We've got $4 billion worth of investment going on in our community right now. We've got the jobs happening. We've got things like the Ring Road. Every school in this electorate has seen an upgrade. We've seen the rebuild of our special school on the north side. We've seen the rebuild of the special school on the south side happening now, and the Hall State School. We can finally call it the Hall State School because it's actually getting a hall. So these are all the good things that Labor governments do, and that's why I'm Labor, and that's why you should vote Labor at the election.
Thank you, Craig. Next up, we have David Bond from One Nation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Bond. I'm your One Nation candidate for the seat of Rocky. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to everyone that's here today. It's fantastic to see so many people caring for their community. And I'd like to thank Tom, 4RO and the CQ today for organising this event to give us the time to come and speak to you today. So like I said, my name's David Bond. I was born in the UK in 1985. I did my schooling in the UK and subsequently I joined the British Armed Forces where I became an aircraft technician and I used to fix helicopters for a living. Once I finished my tour of duty, I then decided to do a bit of travelling. And fortunately, I had my truck licence from the British Army as well, so I managed to travel around the UK, driving trucks, seeing the sights, etc., etc. Once I finished seeing everything I wanted to see, I then decided to travel through Europe. And I subsequently ended up in Taiwan, where I lived there for a period of time. And I met my wife, Lily, and we decided to continue travelling, and we ended up here in Australia. Now, one of the funny things about Australia that most people don't understand is how big the country is. It's huge. So as backpackers with limited funding, it's very difficult to actually see the whole of Australia. So we decided that we wanted to settle here. And I was fortunate enough that I managed to find a small local business here in Rocky that was able to sponsor me for my particular skill set. So thank you, Doug, for doing that. We wouldn't be here without you. And in 2015, we decided to become citizens. So that way we can get involved in the politics here and actually make a difference as much as we could at that time. Now, I've been in business for myself for 13 years, nearly. I'm also on the board of directors for a non-for-profit organisation that helps people get low-cost housing or get into low-cost housing, and that's in conjunction with the government. I'm also a Justice of the Peace. I have 2 young boys that were born in the Rocky Base Hospital, and they both go to Heights College here in Rocky. So one of the main reasons why I decided to actually take up this mantle and run for state government is purely and simply because of all the nonsense that's going on around in the world at the moment. Just look at what's going on in Europe and the UK. We are heading down the exact same path they are. No ifs, no buts. I've seen it. Like I said, I've lived in other countries. I've seen what works and what doesn't. And with all the leftist woke agendas that are being pushed on society at the moment, we are definitely going down the same path as the UK and others. And I don't want to see my boys' future disappear because of the left woke ideology that we've been pushed on in this country right now. So I'm here to stand up for the everyday Aussie that's had enough. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Next up, we have Mick Jones from the Greens.
Thank you very much for coming out, folks. My name is Mick Jones. I'm the Greens candidate for Rockhampton. You'll forgive me if my hand shakes on the mic a little bit while I'm speaking because I'm very enthusiastic about talking to the community about the issues that matter. I spend most of my time listening and then occasionally I get to talk a little bit. Look, we're in a state of crisis in this country, that's true, but it's not because of a left woke agenda, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a woke lefty. We're dealing with a situation where successive governments, LNP and Labor, have chronically underfunded essential services for decades, and they've done it while taking massive donations from giant multinational corporations who always seem to get away with limited regulation, very low royalties, and basically a sweetheart deal from the government. Meanwhile, teachers, nurses, hospitals, schools, housing, childcare, you name it, we've had to deal with underfunded services, particularly in regional Queensland. Now, a bit of my background, and I emphasise this, after I graduated from CQU, I got hit with a very serious life-threatening illness. And it's health professionals in Rockhampton who saved my life and kept me alive through that incredible crisis. So depending on whether you like my politics, you could be grateful to them or possibly a bit resentful. But look, at the end of that, I had to get shipped down to Brisbane to get treatment that we could have gotten in Rockhampton. They weren't even given approval to do that treatment in Rockhampton. We have specialists that are only coming up once in a blue moon to see people. We've got an underfunded system, particularly in the regions, not because we can't afford to fund it better, but because politicians seem to always prioritise the interests of a billionaire mining tycoon or the big 5 banks or a multinational company or property developers ahead of people in our community that need real progress. The Queensland Greens have drawn a firm line against that. We don't take corporate donations from any source. Any source. It doesn't matter if you're a coal mine, a wind farm company, a vegan bicycle company, it doesn't matter. If you're a for-profit entity, we won't take your money. And then we don't talk to lobbyists, likewise. Canberra and Brisbane are lousy with lobbyists. You can't go through Parliament without one jumping out of a hallway or trying to get you into a chat. And the lobbying system is deeply corrupt, even if it's technically legal. The problems we have very much come from that cushy relationship between politicians and lobbyists and journalists, and we have to cut through the misinformation we're dealing with. Right now, we've got an issue with crime in Rockhampton. I think it's disgraceful that we're scapegoating the most vulnerable people in the situation, including the people dealing with it, rather than holding our authorities to account for the massive money they've underfunded us with. So we want to present real solutions to you at this election, and we'd love to talk to you after the meeting as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The 5 prep questions the candidates have seen before. They were given these a couple of weeks ago and they were formed by our committee. For every question that we ask tonight, including the 5 ones from the community later on, they'll have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The first one will be in relation to crime. The amount of crime, in particular youth crime, has been a topic of concern for many residents in the CQ electorates. What strategies will you be advocating for to address this problem, specifically in CQ if elected? I'll ask Donna Kirkland to start first.
In 2015-2016, the Palaszczuk-Miles government watered down the Youth Justice Act. In doing that, they have created a generation of untouchables, and we all are living in that. I've been out and spoken to thousands of people in our community, door knocking, etc. And I've had stories of people who are living in their home frightened, people who are calling out for change. One such story was from a family who had an intruder come into their home, who shot up with drugs in their lounge room, took their food from their kitchen, and then proceeded to go out and take their car. In reversing out with the car, the father was awakened. He chased out the window, out the door after that person, managed to catch them, and those children presented to the court, those youths presented to the court 64 charges and walked away. It is time that we put the victims first. It is time that we give consequences for actions. In the first 100 days of government, an LNP government will instill adult crime, adult time. We will remove the clause within the Youth Justice Act that says detention is to be used as a last resort. Only the LNP have the right plan for our youth crime issues in this town. Before that, we will put in a pathway that will ensure children do not end up on a pathway to crime. And after they come out of detention, we have $165 million, $75 million that will go towards rehabilitation. It is a multi-pronged approach, and I am pleased to be a part of the delivery.
Freddie, same question to you on the topic of crime. What strategies will you be advocating for to address this problem, specifically in CQ?
I was actually looking the data around 1,878 crimes actually. This is from the police information I got. 1,878 crimes, and the maximum sentence were very rare. And the kids, if you ask the kids, they know the rights, but they don't. The teachers or parents, they don't teach about their responsibility. So, and they need to be punished. I know that without a discipline, it doesn't work. So, in this, I agree with Donna Kilken. Sometimes the law is a bit loose here. So, if you're under 18, you can do anything you want. You can get away because the kids know there's nothing going to be happen. So, without a proper discipline, without a proper restrictions, if you don't bring a proper restrictions, it doesn't matter how much money you injected into the community, it's going to be a same story. And if we don't control this situation, Australia could end up like a third world country within 20 years. So in my opinion, the law need to be reviewed and the sentence needs to be implemented to the whoever making a repeatedly. Sometimes we can give a grace, one time, 2 times, 3 times. But if you, with the police and Department of Justice need to monitor, and if they really become a problem for the society, we need to do something. Thank you.
Craig Marshall, on the topic of crime, what strategies will you be advocating for to address the problem, specifically in CQ?
Sure. So this has been used as a political football for a long time. The LNP coming out with policies like adult time for adult crime. They haven't clarified what they consider as an adult crime. Do you know? I don't. Well, that's good. Can you clarify it? Because the LNP... Well, I've not made the policy, mate. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what it is. And we've seen magistrates a bit loose on convicting criminals. What magistrate do you know is going to commit a 13 or a 14-year-old child to an adult sentence? None. This is why the Labor Party has been intent and created some of the strongest laws in youth crime in this country. We have removed detention at last resort, even though the LNP keep telling us they're going to do that if they're elected. It's already been done by the Labor Party. We've strengthened some of our laws. Instead of saying may consider the risk of reoffending, we change it to must, so these magistrates will act and lock up these kids that need to be locked up. We also know that a lot of these kids do come from an at-risk youth background. I'm a foster carer. I've seen where some of these kids come from. Not all of them, but quite a lot of them do. And these are the ones that usually reoffend because locking them up doesn't do a damn thing for them. All it does is gives them a safe place to stay. It gives them 3 meals a day that they probably weren't getting before. It gives them a safe roof over their head. They've seen their parents go in and out of prison, and it's not a penalty for them. We've got our Youth Co-Responder program, which has been linking these kids and their families with our evidence-based programs that are keeping them on the straight and narrow, linking them with education, linking them with jobs. These are the things that good Labor governments fund. We've committed 26 new police for the region. We've got new programs coming in. We've got Project Booyah. Sorry.
I will just remind everyone, it is fairest if we give everyone their full 2 minutes to respond to every question. I've got no hesitation in stopping the clock if there are outbursts again. Next question to David, same question, sorry. On the topic of youth crime, what strategies will you be advocating for to address this problem, specifically in CQ?
So first and foremost, any good government should make sure that everyone is safe in their home, on the streets, in their cars. It doesn't matter where they are. Any good government should do that. So One Nation clearly has a plan to get this under control. And first of all, it comes down to making sure that there are indeed consequences for actions. Most of these juveniles, they're of age where they understand what's right and what is wrong. And the softy approach of the Labor Party and the slogans of the LNP just don't quite cut it, especially as far as I'm concerned. So there is a program down south, which I'd bring your attention to. It's called Hard Yakka. It's been in operation for a long time now, and it has a 90% success rate in terms of rehabilitation. The 10% that don't rehabilitate, we incarcerate. Plain and simple. And we don't send them to a holiday camp, which is basically what they're sent to now. We send them to somewhere where they do their time for their crime and reflect on what they have done as individuals to the community. It's not fair on the community that these kids get arrested. Within 24 hours, they get a slap on the wrist. It doesn't matter how many offences they have, they just let them back out on the streets again. And that's not fair on the everyday citizens that live here. So again, One Nation has a multi-pronged approach to deal with youth crime. And if elected, we will make sure we get crime under control and quickly. Thank you.
Mick Jones, on the topic of youth crime, what strategies will you be advocating for to address this problem in CQ?
Okay, let's talk about crime. A couple of years ago, there was a royal commission into the banking industry. Am I up against something? So a couple of years ago in Canberra, there was a royal commission into the banking industry where the banking industry admitted that they had conducted illegal wire transfers with criminal organisations all over the world. These were not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of thousands of illegal transactions with outlaw motorcycle gangs in America that were peddling meth to children, organisations on the terrorist watch list, and literally child pornography trafficking rings. So that's what the banking industry admitted that they were doing. They let electronic transactions take place, which allowed for massive campaigns of money laundering from serious, hardened criminals all over the world, all over the Pacific and beyond. And that's on record. You can go and read about that. That's publicly available knowledge. When handing down their ruling, the Royal Commission said that they didn't want to name and shame the CEOs that had overseen that grotesque behaviour. They didn't want to name and shame them. So when a CEO of a bank oversees such extraordinary behaviour, we don't want to embarrass them. And we're here talking about putting children in jail and putting more children in jail. And however many kids we put in jail, we want to put more. There are hundreds of kids getting stuck in Queensland watch houses without even being convicted. So we're incarcerating kids without conviction or trial. We have massive serious outcomes. And I want to tell you, if you want a child to repeat offend, you put them in jail, because 96% of them will if they're incarcerated. We spend tens of millions of dollars on alternatives and tens of billions of dollars on incarceration. And we are letting the real culprits off the hook, because the people behind me have been underfunding the essential services that would protect these children for decades. Healthcare, education. We had the maternity ward on bypass in Gladstone. Before birth, we are getting screwed by our government. And then when people fall through the cracks and tragedies happen, we're blaming the most vulnerable people we can. It's a cop-out. It's gutless. It's disgraceful. I'm not going to support the incarceration of children, particularly because it increases the incidence of crime in our community. Thank you.
Tess, we're back. Just don't turn the mic off and we'll be all good. On the topic of crime, Margaret, what strategies will you be advocating for to address the problem in CQ?
Thank you. I support the LNP policies in relation to youth crime. We've had policies for the last 10 to 15 years which have favoured the individual over the broader community, and that's wrong. I acknowledge that the Labor government is making some changes, but it's too little too late. I understand that I'm the only candidate who made a submission to the Youth Justice Committee while it was still operational. I spoke then in my submission about the residential care homes and the danger and the challenge that they were creating in our community. We need to support foster care, and I acknowledge one of our colleagues here is a foster carer. They play an important role on helping to keep kids on the straight and narrow. There has been some success in Rockhampton in reducing youth crime, and we should acknowledge that and recognise that our police have done a good job, but it is still much worse than an acceptable level. And there's been no analysis to work out what worked, why Rockhampton is the outlier in actually reducing youth crime. But whatever it is, it's not going to shift the dial quickly enough. We have to recognise that these are exceptional times. During COVID, we took exceptional measures to deal with an epidemic, and this is no different. I think it's right that judges get to see the things that a child did prior to turning 18. We can trust them to take into account whether that's relevant. I think it's right that we detain hardened criminals of whatever age they may be. But I also support interventions like boot camps and on-country education, and of course Booyah is a brilliant program and there needs to be more of it. We know that there are a relatively small number of serious repeat offenders. We need to tailor our options and use them as a precision instrument. We need coordination and accountability of all that government money. Thank you.
Our next question, first of all, will be answered by Freddie Johnson from Family First. The health system in central Queensland is under pressure, whether the point of emphasis is on ambulance ramping or surgery wait times. What will be your emphasis for solutions and improvement to the health system if elected? Freddie.
I know that we have a lot of problems in the health sector. My wife also works in ED in base hospital, and she always talk about how the ED is ramped with the patients and everything, and we need more funding. Definitely we need more funding, and we need to expand. And there is a strategic way, because sometimes we made this decision. I think most of the time the decision made in Rockhampton based upon a crisis management. We wait for crisis to happen, then we make a decision. I think, just think about after 10, 15 years, the more immigration, more people going to come. If we don't act now, it's going to be more problem there. So it's like in India, I'm from India, we don't have that much resources, not facility, but people try to use a telepath consulting. Sometimes if people come to the hospital, maybe they have a minor issues, but they need to wait for 8-9 hours. But some of the things we can actually discuss through online or teleconsulting. There's a lot of things to do that, but definitely we need more beds, we need more funding. And I don't know why we wait this much long. If I am a MP, what I do, I will take Rockhampton. Let's go to Queensland Parliament, 1,000 people, we strike them, because it's our money, it's your money, it's our taxpayers' money. So we need to convince to the Parliament, say we need this help, because we are in crisis. And if we work together, I hope we can find a solution. Thank you.
Craig Marshall, on the topic of health, what will be your emphasis for solutions in improvement to the health system?
Thanks, Tom. As a health carer of 18 years, health is a passion of mine. And Freddie's right, we need more beds. And that's what Labor's delivering on. 68 new aged care beds, because we know that the base hospital has about 15% of beds blocked at the moment from people awaiting a placement in an aged care home. We've got 32-bed new mental health facility coming, an additional 9 beds for mental health, because we know that that is needed in the community. We've also got a satellite hospital that I fought hard to get a commitment for Rockhampton, that is going to assist with clearing up that emergency department that's struggling at the moment due to our growth in population. I know before COVID there was 100 empty houses out in Gracemere. They're now all full. We weren't expecting this population growth, and it's exacerbated this problem. This problem that was initially caused by the former coalition government freezing Medicare rebates for so long. And we now don't have any bulk billing clinics left apart from the urgent care facility that was opened by the Labor federal government that's starting to reduce the issues in our emergency department. The satellite hospital will come with a minor injury and illness clinic where you can take all your injuries like broken bones, sporting injuries and that sort of thing and divert patients away from that emergency ward and free it up so that people with urgent cases such as heart attacks and strokes and vehicle accidents will have faster access. It will also provide faster access for everyone else in the community at the satellite hospital or the urgent care clinic to get treated. These are the things that good Labor governments do. We're doing what matters for Central Queenslanders and we're doing what matters for the health sector. Thank you.
David, on the topic of the health system, what emphasis for solutions will you be advocating for if elected?
Okay, thank you. The health system, everybody knows, is in shambles right now. It's failed. It is, well, I would say it's failing, but I would actually like to say it's failed us, and in a significant way. Mandalay Medical Centre here in Rocky, which was the biggest bulk billing centre when it was in full swing, was servicing between 500 and 600 patients a week. That's a significant number. When it shut down because of the actions of the previous government, and this government, should I say, in regards to the bulk billing, they changed our zoning from, outer rural to inner rural, which means they cut the funding to encourage GPs to stay here. One of the things I'd like to see is that reverted, to try and encourage GPs to come here. That's for a start. Now, where did all those patients go? They had nowhere to go. If you don't have much money in your pocket, you can't exactly go to a standard doctor who doesn't bulk bill and pay $120 to see a doctor. So most people forego it until it becomes such an issue that they end up at the ED ward, which then obviously makes the issue worse. With the ramping that we have, the amount of people in beds in the corridors is simply not acceptable. And to make matters worse, the elderly patients that are at the hospital are chewing up huge amounts of beds. Now, they shouldn't be. Why not? Because the current government didn't have the foresight to plan for the population growth. Now, the population growth we're going to go through in the next 20 years is a significant one. About double, if not more, probably 75% growth. So we need to start planning for it now. They should have been planning for it a long time ago. Now, in terms of funding, Labor Party want to create a satellite hospital. I think that's nonsense. Where the Mandalay Medical Centre is at the moment, that is basically a satellite hospital in a nutshell. Almost exactly the same. Why would we get that money and spend it on another satellite hospital? Why don't we get that money instead and split it? Most of it goes to the hospital and the rest goes to getting GPs here. Thank you.
Mick, on the topic of the health system, what will be your emphasis for solutions if elected?
Okay, folks. Firstly, we have to emphasise revenue. We run our essential services on a shoestring budget and open massive rivers of cash for every multinational corporation that comes along. We spend billions of dollars on revenue for profit-taking companies, and then we go and tell nurses, sorry, we can't raise your pay yet, so we're putting your pay on a freeze again. These people need a royalties holiday and so forth. If you like some of Craig's policy on healthcare, you're going to love ours, because that's where Labor's getting all their policies in this election, from previous Greens Party policies. We've got better funded versions, more comprehensive versions. I will give Craig credit for the point he was just going to raise there. The reason Craig wants a satellite hospital is particularly due to the ramping. So you can't send emergency cases to Mandalay Medical Centre. That's the issue. We don't see it the same way. We think we need to build capacity in our public healthcare system. We need to support our AMBOs, support our workers. I had that experience myself recently. One of the last days I spent with my dad was spent in A&E, just waiting to try and get him into a booth, to get him into a bay at Rocky Base Hospital. It's challenging. It's extremely challenging. We need to talk revenue. We need to raise royalties. We need to stop giving out massive taxpayer-funded subsidies to corporations, including including property developers. We need to make sure that that money is going to serve our interests and our needs. And as I said, when we've got breakdowns of reproductive health and abortion centre breaking down in Rocky, lads to maternity ward on bypass for I think it was 230 days. People just come to Rocky, stay in a hotel for a couple of weeks if you've got a problem. It was absurd. It's grotesque. We have to do a lot better, and we do it by reforming policy and breaking the relationship between our big political parties and the big donors that have controlled our policy for far too long. Thank you very much.
Margaret, on the topic of the health system, what will be your emphasis for solutions and improvement if elected?
Thank you. If I'm elected on the 26th of October as your independent state member, I will keep working and calling out the problems that there are at our hospital until the wait times are reasonable, until the worst that we have seen is nothing but a memory. We know that some people have a good experience at the hospital, but everyone's experience should be good. The worst problems do seem to be localised to things like ENT, orthopaedics, and of course the emergency department. I'm not opposed to a facility on the north side. Please don't call it a satellite hospital. I am opposed to $78 million for the price tag. I'm not sure whether the government got a second quote, but they really should. We need to do things that talk about funding. If we compare our community, our region, our central Queensland Health and Hospital Service with the Cairns Region Health and Hospital Service. Both are large geographic areas, both have some fairly similar socio-economic problems. They have a bigger population. We are only 84% of the population of the Cairns Health Region, but we have only half the number of beds, we have half the number of doctors, we have 51% of the number of allied health specialists and 63% of their budget. Something is seriously wrong. We are working on outdated formulas. As a way of alleviating bed block, it's good that we are now looking at aged care, and I commend the government for that. It's something similar to what I had suggested to the executives at Health when I met with them, and I know it's not a new idea, and I know that because I have been told reliably, and I'd be interested to know if it's true, that Queensland Health were at Sunset Ridge about 12 months ago and looking at the situation down there. If that's true, why did they delay? Thank you.
Donna, on the topic of the health system, what will be your emphasis for solutions and improvement if elected?
At the end of the last LNP government, hospital ramping was at 2%. Currently, hospital ramping is at 48%. That is the highest in the state. Today, LNP are willing, should we be elected in October. We've already An LNP government promises, should we be elected in October, to deliver $61 million. $61 million to relocate the TAFE precinct from where you see it over at Canning Street over to here at the CQ University. And what that does is frees up 8 hectares of infrastructure and land on the Canning Street precinct for health to breathe out from the hospital and create extra clinical space. Today, we announced that we would do the step up, step down facility here in Rockhampton. This is an incredible facility that is for mental health for youths, and it is going to be a game changer for Queensland, right here in Rockhampton. And what that does is allows youths with mental health issues to either step up into care that's outside of their homes or to step down from acute care in the hospital system. We've also announced a dedicated Health Sciences Academy, $95 million. The LNP is committed to making sure that we increase our workforce for healthcare here in the regions. 70% of people who study in the regions remain in the regions. We are acutely aware that there is a shortage, a massive shortage of staff and workforce here in our health services. So we will deliver better triaging, we will deliver in the first 100 days real-time data that gives us accountability for our health crisis.
Our next question is on the topic of the Bruce Highway. We live in one of the many deadly hotspots for incidents and accidents for the Bruce Highway. What will you be advocating for in relation to the improvement of our roads if elected? I'll ask Craig Marshall to start.
Thanks, Tom. In regional Queensland, we use our roads every day. It's critical that they are safe and reliable. We have a $6 billion investment in projects on the Bruce Highway. We've also been investing $1 billion in our freight route, inland freight route, to take heavy vehicles off the Bruce Highway. The $6 billion investment includes things like our Rockhampton Ring Road. It includes all the other big projects that we have done as a government in Queensland. When the LNP were last in government, they promised big spending on the Bruce Highway and didn't deliver a single project. We're still waiting to see what they're going to do because they didn't do it last time. We've also committed to $250 million additional funding on the Bruce Highway to address some of the problem areas that we've seen around. We've committed $500 million to our beef roads because we know that's important for our beef producers and people travelling to mine sites. We've heard candidates here tonight talk about the Ring Road and diverting traffic from Rockhampton. That's simply not true. The Ring Road will take 3,000 trucks off our local roads. It's not going to stop people staying in Rockhampton. People who want to stay in Rockhampton will stay here because where are they going to stay between here and Mackay? The Ring Road is simply to make it more effective to travel further north and to take those trucks off the road. Thank you.
David, on the topic of the Bruce Highway, what will you be advocating for in relation to improvement?
First of all, I'd like to say it's disgraceful. The Bruce Highway is a significant piece of infrastructure in Queensland. It connects the south to the north, and it connects us to the rest of the world and down south, obviously. With the amount of immigration that we've had over the last few years, you would have thought that the government would have actually spent a little bit of money on improving the Bruce Highway. But again, they're out of touch. It's clear they don't really know what they're doing. They don't have any planning in place at all. And again, I think it's disgraceful. Almost daily, people are dying on our Bruce Highway, and it's simply not acceptable. Now, One Nation would like to see a dual-lane highway from Brisbane all the way to Cairns, separated dual-lane highway. We'd also like to see a lot of the freight going onto rail, which would then remove a lot of trucks from the road and increase safety for everybody that travels down the Bruce Highway. Now, one of the things I want to see personally is in Rocky here, we have the old rail yards. I'd like that to be turned into a distribution depot. So all the goods come in via freight, they go into Rocky, and then they get distributed from here. A couple of things will happen there. Obviously, it will increase road safety and remove a lot of heavy trucks off our road, which you seen the other day, that truck that blew up. I mean, come on now. It's terrible, isn't it? And then secondly, it will create a lot of jobs here in central Queensland by having a distribution hub here. And it will also provide all the truckies that aren't on the road, because we put them on freight, to still be on the road and still have their own livelihoods. It's a total win-win. So like I said, what we want to see is a dual lane highway from Brisbane all the way to Cairns. Thank you.
Mick, on the topic of the Bruce Highway, what will you be advocating for in relation to the improvement of our roads?
Well, firstly, folks, I'd like to thank the Labor Party for adopting our discounted public transport policy. The 50-cent fares have been doing very well. They're better in our policy, they're free, and that would save another $18 million of processing. But look, Bruce Highway is a much more serious matter. I will flag that we've got some pretty good passenger trains, like the Tilt train from Rocky to Brisbane is probably one of the better trains in the state. We want to make sure that we're having enough support for passenger trips as well, and we want freight, including rail freight, passenger freight, not to have to wait behind coal trains. So we're going to have to talk about increasing infrastructure. I'm all in favour of anything that repurposes the rail yard in Rockhampton. I think it was disgraceful when it was privatised, and we've lost manufacturing capacity there, but there's a challenge to see how we can use that space appropriately. We're absolutely in support of infrastructure upgrades. Even the greeniest Greens recognise the need for things like, safer road to Yeppoon, for instance, recently, and we can take some steps to maintain and get a bit of habitat preserved in the bargain. But it's really important that we move as much of that infrastructure as we can off our roads and onto rail. It's a much safer alternative. We used to have much better rail access even out to Yeppoon. I think they're building a bushwalking track over the railroads we used to have towards Yeppoon. We can do a lot better than that. Public transport is the future of transportation in this country. It's a much safer way to travel, particularly for workers in the sector. You can be the safest truckie on the road and you can still be pressured to push through to morning by your employers. The tragedy that happened down near Gladstone shows us the limitations of that approach, and we want to make sure that we're building infrastructure. But we've also got to afford it. And part of the reason there's these shortcomings when these commitments to infrastructure come out is that governments are juggling incredibly tight budgets while boasting about surpluses and failing to raise revenue. So whatever you want to do for Queensland, we're going to have to afford it, and we're going to have to make big choices, strong choices and bold choices about raising revenue so we can actually make this stuff happen, instead of coming back here in 4 years' time and it turns out this hasn't been done and that hasn't been done. That's the big problem with infrastructure. Thank you.
Margaret, in relation to the Bruce Highway, what will you be advocating for in relation to the improvement of our roads if elected?
Thank you, Tom. When I first put up a post in early August showing a few potholes on the Bruce, 90,000 people saw that post within a few days, 12,000 engaged, 300 people liked the post, 320 made a comment. The issue had burst onto the public debate and absolutely unleashed deep dissatisfaction in the community. I will push for a bipartisan intergovernment working group to secure a long-term commitment that is exempt from the vagaries of budget cuts and political pork barrelling to plan and deliver the improvements that we need. I think it's important that we get stuck into delivering the low-hanging fruit, the things that are no-brainers, as quickly as possible, that we don't wait for 3 years for a talk fest first. And we need big amounts of money, and we need the project delivered over a short space of time. And I do believe that a part of the solution is putting freight back on rail as much as we can. We know that trucks really wreck the highway, and we also recognise that with our narrow gauge, a decision made back in the 1860s that we're forever answering for, our trains can't go as fast as trains in other countries. So we may need to invest in taking out some of the bends as much as possible so that the rail works better for us. I'm just delighted to see at least one party returning or talking about returning to the 80-20 split. That is important, and we need to get our highway delivered on the same kind of support from the federal government as other states did. Thank you.
Donna, in relation to the Bruce Highway, what will you be advocating for in relation to improvement if elected?
The Palaszczuk Miles government have had 10 years of failing to manage, failing to resource, and failing to plan for all of our services, including our highways. The Bruce Highway Advisory Board that was put together by the Labor government is a good idea, except that they've only met 2 times in 2 years. So we will, LNP government, reinstate the Bruce Highway Advisory Board and ensure that they absolutely meet more than that to deliver on good management, good resourcing, and certainly good good management and good resourcing and good planning. We also saw the Labor government, the Palaszczuk Miles government, clear and kill the driver reviver. Now that was a facility that we all utilised. My husband and I drove to Mackay many, many times for business and often stopped at the driver reviver. That was a facility where people could have a rest. That is no longer there. It also gave money to those hard-working volunteers who are no longer required to help keep our communities safe. Also, the 80-20 rule. We will make sure that we continue to lobby to see 80-20 from our federal government contribution restored. We also have already heard the LNP, our colleagues, our federal colleagues have already come out and said that they will do that should they be elected, and we will stand by that, and we call on the Labor government to match that. We call for bipartisan support for the 80-20.
Freddie, on the topic of the Bruce Highway, what will you be advocating for in relation to improvement if elected?
In my opinion, it's good to hear like a utopian dream. We can have from here to Keynes have a double lane. And first of all, we need to, I'm not this is kind of the Queensland Premier need to be, all this elected members need to discuss $1 billion, how much money we have to spend. See, if you have enough money, I think about practical. So I basically look on Rockhampton because this is a major issue. So how much money we have? We have a 60, 70, 80 billion to throw off and we can build a double line. In 1989, Wayne Goss promised when he elected, he going to build a school in Gracemere. 35 years, nothing happened. So sometimes it's good to have a talk, but in practical, how much money we have, how much money we allocated for the transportation. So as a macro perspective, this is a micro, the big road, as a micro perspective from Rockhampton. So, if I am elected, I can't fix all from Brisbane to Keynes, but in Rockhampton, I just ask the council or mayor, we need to drive around, see all the black spots, all the intersection, and drive around. I'm a very practical person. So then we find the problems and fix that problem with our money. So if we have money, if the government is allowed to give the money, we work together, but this is a billions of dollars deal. So we have money, but if you find the money, then we can find the solution. Otherwise, it's like an utopian dream. We're going to fix the double line. It's good to hear that, but I want to see the reality. That's all. Thank you.
Question number 4 is on the topic of housing. Rental vacancies in the Rockhampton area and the Cape Coast are currently sitting at under 1%, and the average time for a house to be on the market in our area is just over a week. What will you be advocating for if elected to Parliament to improve the housing supply in the electorate? And I'll start with David Bond.
Thank you. Let me just get my notes here. So Queensland has a massive immigration problem at the moment. I spoke about immigration before with regards to the roads and preparing for the influx of migrants that we have here. So one of the things that we want to do as the Queensland government is put pressure on the federal government to go to what we like to call a net zero immigration for a period of time, which will allow Australia and Australia's infrastructure to catch up with the people that we currently have here. The only reason why the government are bringing in so many immigrants is to pop up our GDP. But if you look at our GDP per capita, we're actually in recession and have been 6 times in a row, which is the longest on record. It's an absolute joke that the government would do this. We also plan to ban all foreign ownership of residential property and will force them to sell. By doing that, that will free up a significant number of homes that will allow everyday Aussies to actually be able to purchase a property. These are all simple fixes and can be done with almost immediate effect. We want to review all government taxes on building new homes. Approximately 45% off the top of my head of the cost of building a new home is related to some form of tax, whether it's from local council or from the state government. So we want to do a total review of that. Also, we want to create tax-free rooms and granny flats where if you are the primary owner of the property, then you can rent out your room or your granny flat tax-free. This will also free up a lot of, create a lot more beds for people to stay in. We also want to simplify land releases and building approvals, and we want to work in conjunction with local councils to find parcels of land that are suitable and open them up so that way we can actually develop them for residential housing. Thank you.
Mick, same question. What will you be doing to advocate for, if elected to Parliament, to improve the housing supply in the electorate?
Folks, it never ceases to amaze me when a guy with a British accent complains about immigrants. Look, I just want to emphasise actually, and we forgot this at the start, I want to acknowledge coming from a greenie, I can trace my ancestry to the Second Fleet, mate. And there's a bunch of people who've been here a lot longer, and we need to acknowledge them before we take a single step further. The Darrambal people are the people of this land, and if there's anybody who gets to complain about people turning up and wrecking the joint, it's them. Okay, so let's all take a step back from scapegoating the immigration that has been a vital part of our country's success for many, many years. Housing is a victim of tax incentives. Taxpayers lose tens of billions of dollars incentivising property developers to build homes, keep them off the market, get a tax cut for not providing them for renters, and it has inflated the price of housing and inflated the price of rents to a shocking degree. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I say the most hated man in Canberra is our guy, Max, the member for Griffith, who's been down there putting to the government on housing for many months now. And as he's pointed out over and over again, when you give a tax cut to somebody in our community, like say the small business payroll levies that we want to cut, that's positive. When you give it to multinational property consortiums, they hoover it up, the taxpayer's worse off, and we can see the inflating price of housing and price of rents. The occupancy value is all well and good. We've got massive amounts of vacant property in Rockhampton. We need to rebuild public housing, which used to be a component of our prosperity and works extremely well in Europe. And we need to stop allowing donations from property developers, which used to be illegal in Queensland, but they found a bunch of loopholes now. The LNP and the Labor Party are both benefiting from closer relationships with that particular group of people. We're the victims of profit taking, we've just had a survey out today. The majority of Queenslanders support our policy of a 1% per year rent increase cap. That's the majority of One Nation voters, I might add, the majority of everyone's voters. And it's absolutely vital that we implement those real changes, because renters are doing it incredibly tough, and we have to make real changes. Thank you.
Margaret, on the topic of housing, what will you be advocating for, if elected to Parliament, to improve the supply?
Thanks, Tom. It makes me cranky when I remember how hard we fought to get the overpass that should have gone from the Bruce Highway across to the Elida land. Stockland would have built 2,500 lots in 2017 if the state government had supported council's bid. And the new owners of that parcel of land still need that overpass. But never mind, we're in the situation that we're in now. And we need short-term solutions, and I think that's going to be a combination of charities and churches and council, and I commend the work that Councillor Grant Mathers has begun. And we need to find any public housing sites and units that are not being released to market as quickly as they should, and get on to that. And I'm keen for council to look at what Fraser Coast has done. I've got to remember I'm not council anymore, but at the Fraser Coast, the council has brought in a bylaw that will allow you to have a caravan in your own backyard for 6 months out of any 12 months. And I think that's one way to give some instant relief. Added to that, I'm keen to see a relaxation of the prohibitions and problems that are created if you try to put a second kitchen in your house. We need to facilitate dual living, we need to facilitate granny flats, and we should do that without infrastructure charges, at least for a 2-year period or so that people are incentivised to make that value add to their property value, but that also helps us. And we do need those big pieces of infrastructure that allow subdivision to move ahead. As I mentioned, the Stockland subdivision, now owned by another company, they still need that overpass or they won't be able to unlock that land. I think shared equity schemes are doable in a period where our property values are rising. We know that 33% of the state lives outside the southeast corner, but only 20% of residential building activity takes place here. We need to look to see why that is.
Donna, on the topic of housing, what will you be advocating for if elected to Parliament to improve the housing supply in the electorate?
When I was in council, I was approached by some people who were homeless for 12 months. It was something that was very shocking, but at the same time, it was time for us to do something and to step up about that. I'm a founding member of the Shelter Collective. The Shelter Collective is an organisation that has partnered with private sector to deliver 10 houses here in Rockhampton. Currently, there are 53 vacant blocks that are owned by the department on which nothing has been built. I visited the homeless just a few weeks ago, and down there are the stories of people who are 55, a lady there who domestic violence ended up sleeping in her car, and these things are simply unacceptable. And the LNP government will deliver a $2.5 billion of regional investment fund that will partner with local governments. 50% of that will be regional. That will help to build infrastructure, to build housing. We've also committed to $61 million, I mentioned it earlier, here to relocate the TAFE precinct across to the university, and part of that deal is 27 hectares of greenfield land, prime premium land on the university campus behind us, and that will deliver between 400 and 800 heads on pillows. That is what an LNP government will do should we be elected in October.
Freddie, on the topic of housing, what will you be advocating for if elected to Parliament to improve the supply in the electorate?
This is more like a LNB and Labour issue. Family first never going to make a government in Queensland. But I tell you that, how many politicians really dig deep, like even like a council, homeless people we have. So if the politician is really concerned about the homeless people in this, like our state, we have a solution. We need to have a strict immigration policy also. I notice that people come from from other crisis, they are living in a good apartment, and the Australian citizens live on the car. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we need a strict rules. Also, we have a lot of tracts of land. We need to be subdivided. Also, when the property developers, when they subdivide, we know that if you have if you spend $500,000, if you bought a land, if you subdivide maybe a couple of pieces, you can make millions of dollars. But the government have restrictions. You can have a profit, but there is a limit in profit. So people can actually afford to buy the property. So it's a very complicated issue to figure it out how to deal with the homeless. So we can have too much restrictions on environmental concerns, hard to build. Margaret Strela was talk about, if you want to do something, too many restrictions. So that give you kind of a little bit a restriction to build houses and other things. Also prehab houses. Even Elon Musk sleep on a $20,000 house. End of the day, if you are homeless, you need a roof. That's all. You don't need a 5-star hotel. So if we can work together, if the politician can work together, we can find a solution. I believe that if I'm in Parliament, I will sit down and I will discuss and I'll ask a lot of questions and I will come up with a solution. Thank you.
Craig, on the topic of housing, what will you do if elected to Parliament to improve the supply?
Thank you. The Labor Party has our critical response team. So the critical response team is a group of 12 members between north of Brisbane and Rockhampton, and they go around to people who are currently sleeping rough. They find them temporary accommodation, whether it be in a motel or whatever, until they can find them something more permanent. All those people have the opportunity now, with our critical response team, to have a safe and secure home. We also have our Rent Connect officers. So our Rent Connect officers, we've got 12 here in Rockhampton, and what they do is they connect people with little or a slightly rough rental history with properties. They do head leases, so basically that Department of Housing signs the lease for these people for 12 months and gets them into a home. And after that 12 months, they're given supports and provided with rental supports so they can have a safe, secure place. The Miles Labor government has also committed to 53,500 new social and affordable homes throughout Queensland. If I'm elected, I will fight to get as many of those right here in Rockhampton, because I know with our low rental vacancy rate, it is an issue. I want to make sure that all people in our community have the opportunity to have a safe place to live. The other thing I want to do, I want to declare that the Labor Party in Queensland does not accept donations from property developers, Mick. I just sort of love to see it. Love to see it, mate. Anyway, these things are all at risk under the LNP. Last time they were in government, they cut housing construction program by 90% and it sent housing backwards by 428 homes in Queensland. The LNP will do it again. They've appointed a bloke who oversaw those cuts as their housing spokesperson and recently outlined $15.5 billion in federal housing cuts. Thank you.
Question number 5 is, in 2023, drug laws in Queensland were relaxed for anyone caught carrying small quantities of illicit substances like heroin, cocaine or ice, with users to be given 3 chances before facing a criminal charge. Also, the implementation of pill testing at music festivals has been installed. Where do you personally sit on the reality of weakened drug laws across the state? Mick, I'll start with you.
First, folks, it took me about 10 seconds to Google the fact that Labor and Liberal are both getting money from developer-linked lobbyists. Over $500,000 in warnings of a failing ban. So that's what happens, and that's why we've got a Labor Party nibbling around the edges of the housing crisis. But let's move on. Firstly, pill testing saves lives. The purpose of the law is to make us safer and to support the community. Pill testing unambiguously saves lives. It improves the safety of young people, and we unambiguously support it, as do a great many retired police officers and so on. In New South Wales, we had some really shocking statistics where police officers were admitting that their searches of young people at festivals were getting so bad that without permission, and again, this is publicly available knowledge, they were strip searching young women below the age of 16 without their parents' permission, often not even female police officers strip searching those young women. So whenever we talk about thinking of the children, we've really got to be careful that we're actually doing things that will take care of those young people, and pill testing is a policy that saves lives, protects kids, and gets us better information about the threats they face out in the community. Now, when we talk about the other issue, we've got to recognise that the prison system is already massively overcrowded, and the proposal to put a bunch of children through it will make that matters worse. Prison workers in central Queensland were actually some of the worst paid in the entire country until quite recently. They were stalled. Their management, the Queensland Labor government, didn't want to accept their EBA. We had people coming through polling booths talking about it. So we've got an overcrowded, underfunded carceral system. We need to defer people from it. And if you don't believe me, believe the endless line of police officers, senior police officers who come out of their job and say, we need decriminalisation of things like marijuana, we need deferral programs for people with problems, and we need to take care of kids through pill testing and other life-saving measures. Thank you very much.
Margaret, where do you personally sit on the reality of weakened drug laws across the state?
After I stepped down as mayor, I volunteered with night watch chaplains who stay up all night watching over our kids in the nightclub precinct. It was one of the most important and rewarding things I've ever done. But it also gave me a privileged insight into the night scene and the way our kids, yours and mine, are socialising, dating and partying. And the young people that we saw on the street at 2 a.m, or their more coherent friends, would list the drinks and the drugs that had been consumed that led to us needing to intervene and monitor their vital signs or take measures to get them safely home. These young people are not addicted users. They are a generation that will buy drugs if they are convenient and available. And in a classic case of legislation backfiring, sometimes they take drugs as a more affordable way of getting a high than using alcohol alone. And they do it all the while knowing how stupid it is. And then on Monday, they go back to their jobs as nurses and legal secretaries and town planners and retail assistants. I give this detail because I want to get away from the stereotype about who is a drug user. And there is sometimes a fine line and only a few months between the casual drug user and the addicted user. Many of the young people that I surveyed recently believe that pill testing will save lives, and it probably does. But after a lot of soul searching, I've come to the conclusion that government has an obligation to send an absolutely clear message that drug taking is never safe. Consistency in that message will also save lives. Pill testing and 3 chances with drugs confuses that message. It's a slippery slope. And in a similar way to weakening the laws in relation to youth crime that got us in the mess we're in, we can't risk our kids in a social experiment.
Donna, how do you personally sit on the reality of weakened drug laws across the state?
I too, like Margaret, have had the great experience of going out with our night watch chaplaincy, and I also was shocked by what I saw on the streets, but also grateful that we have a great organisation out there doing an incredible work to help our people on the streets in the nights. Now, you heard me share earlier about some children who came into a home and shot up with drugs whilst they were there. I'm going to be very short right here. To support pill testing is to support crime. We do not support pill testing. I do not support pill testing, nor does the LNP.
Freddie, where do you personally sit on weakened drug laws across the state?
I also voluntarily help on the correction department, like in the prison, and I had a chat with a couple of prisoners, and they told me even the drug cartels and drug mafia, they can easy to get out. The new laws actually, the drug mafia can actually have an easy way to get out, but the actual problem is actually facing young kids and everything. I think even that's also related to the youth crime because of the white collar crime. Because the new law is actually give a kind of a loophole for the white collar crime. So I think we need to carefully consider our law. How do we, a drug trafficking, even I know personally 6-7 houses in Rockhampton, they sell drugs. But cops never interested with them. I don't know why. Because maybe they're scared. So the rules must be very strict, and I think that 2023 the drug law is actually, the drug cartels are laughing because they have a loophole to get out and the ordinary people are actually suffering. So we need to have a review on this drug law. Thank you.
Craig, where do you sit on the reality of weakened drug laws across the state? Be nice.
Let's be clear. Drug usage has not been decriminalised. Police, instead of targeting people using small amounts of drugs, are now going after the dealers that sell the drugs to your kids, to my kids in the community. Illicit drugs have serious impacts, not only on the users, but also on our community. Problematic drug use in Australia costs around $12.9 billion to the healthcare system, to the justice system, and to lost productivity in the workplace. Police have been successfully diverting people from minor cannabis possession for over 20 years. More than 160,000 people have been diverted from the justice system, with 72% of those that completed the drug diversion did not re-offend for a drug-related offence during that 4-year period. Talking to the police minister, I know that every police commissioner in the nation agrees with this plan. And I know that kids can fall into a trap when they're out clubbing, like the people here have said. Someone who's never used drugs before can be talked into using it. And I think if they have the option to test those pills before they take it, it has the chance that, one, it'll deter them from taking it in the first place, or at least two, they know it's safe to take if they choose to. Thank you.
David, where do you personally sit on the reality of weakened drug laws across the state?
Thank you. I just want to first start off by saying that the two immigrants here are the ones saying that we need to stop immigration. It's pretty funny stuff, really, isn't it? Anyway, drug laws, right. So One Nation's approach to drug laws are plain and simple. We don't want users to use drugs. We will not promote drugs, and we are certainly against pill testing because that only promotes the use of drugs, which cause so many issues within our society that they need to be banned. Plain, simple. Like I said to you at the beginning, I've done a lot of travelling. I've been to many different countries. I've seen what works and what doesn't. And I'll give you an example of what does work. So my wife is from Taiwan. When you land in Taiwan and you go through arrivals, up the top there it clearly says, now I'm not condoning this, but it clearly says drugs carry the death penalty in Taiwan. Now I'm not suggesting we should use the death penalty, but they're quite clear on drugs. Very, very clear on drugs and drug use. They do not have problems with drug use in Taiwan, full stop. They might have a few party stuff, but trust me, they sort it out quickly because it is illegal and 100% illegal, and we need to enforce similar laws and incarcerate people, especially the drug dealers, which you're right, the coppers are too scared probably to go and get them for whatever reason. I don't know, but we need to sort it out. So again, I want to make it quite clear. One Nation does not support the use of drugs or pill testing. Thank you.
So those are our 5 questions that our committee put together, and over the past couple of weeks, whether it be us on air as announcers or Trish and myself through email, we've received over 70 emails over the past couple of weeks, and we've gone through and figured out 5 questions out of those. So the first one is, both Labor and the LNP passed the Path to Treaty legislation before Australia voted no to the Voice to Parliament, and Capricornia voting 80% no. What are your personal views on this legislation? And I'll start back at Margaret.
So the legislation was not successful, so it's not going ahead. So that's the referendum was very clear on that there would be no treaty. And I think we listened to the people on that.
Donna, State Labor and the LNP have supported Path to Treaty legislation before Australia voted no to the Voice to Parliament. What is your views on this legislation?
We did have a referendum where the people were asked to speak. The people spoke, and we had over 80% of the Capricornia area that said no. David Crisafulli, the leader of the LNP, has been very clear. After he listened, he is now on record for saying that he does not support the pathway to treaty.
Freddie, the Path to Treaty legislation, what are your personal views on the legislation?
Unfortunately, I didn't actually research about this amendment, and I don't have an answer at the moment. Sorry, thank you.
The path to treaty is totally different to the Voice. I think a lot of people voted no to the Voice simply because they didn't understand the full proposal. It was touted as something that it's not, and I don't think that it was well run, that campaign. I am the foster carer of 2 Indigenous children, so for me, it's close to my heart that these kids actually have some sort of support moving forward, and so I am actually for the pathway to treaty.
David, what are your personal views on the pathway to treaty legislation?
Well, I voted no to the Voice. It was a clear choice. It was a discriminatory piece of legislation that they were going to put through, or should I say referendum. And it discriminated the majority of people. We should stop doing that. Now, the path to treaty is a blatant disrespect and disregard for what we as citizens voted for in Capricornia. 80.7% of people in this constituent voted no to the Voice, so why would they legislate it? It's not acceptable. They're clearly not listening to us, and they don't deserve to be in government. Thank you.
Mick, what are your personal views on the Path to Treaty legislation?
Folks, what troubles me at times like this is we seem deeply committed to keeping promises to certain people in our communities, and we can't even make a fair deal with the people whose country we stole when we got here. Let me be very clear, this is stolen land. And we talk about crime, my goodness. Not only is this very clearly stolen land, and we've got hotspots for massacres and tragedies all over our region, we've never addressed that. And I'm not asking for the world, and neither are these people. We're asking for an agreement, a treaty. You know, we're literally in a ceasefire at the present time. We need to get straight. We need to deal straight and deal fairly with the people in our community. Now, the Greens had an extraordinary struggle over their voice because we actually had debate within the party from First Nations people within the party with different points of view. And personally, I think it's tragic that we lost Lydia Thorpe as one of our members in that situation because she is a staunch campaigner. We live in a country where First Nations people are disproportionately targeted by police and basically by every other level. And my frontline experience on domestic violence is a young Indigenous person with a white partner twice her size who she calls the police on and gets arrested. So I'm not really interested in hearing about discrimination against a majority because somebody might have a mild recommendation role in Parliament. I want us to tackle the structural issues that hit us all. And it's not just First Nations people. It's people struggling with housing. It's people struggling to get proper education and healthcare. And I tell you right now, if you're worried about those things and if you want to fight those battles, we have to get together because we're stronger together. And when people try and con us into fighting amongst ourselves, that makes us weaker and that sets us up for a defeat. So I'm going to stand in solidarity with First Nations people and everybody else in this community. And the day will come when most of the people in this room see the wisdom of that. I once again want to acknowledge the Darrinbal people and the Wappaborra people off the coast. They're exceptional, resilient people and they deserve our respect and admiration. Thank you.
Freddie, I will let you go one more time. Come on.
First, I didn't understand the proper question. I really believe that Indigenous people, we all are equally treated same. And I don't want to give a, because I really acknowledge the First Nation people, but they're having a special rights. I think that's kind of a bit unfair. I feel like we want to treat everyone equal. So actually, I agree, no, just like a LNB, what the LNB decision was, that was my point of view. Thank you.
The next question, I'll start with Donna Kirkland on the topic of coal royalties. Where do you sit on coal royalties? Should they go up, down, or stay the same, considering a large percentage of our population in CQ relies on mines being successful? How important to you are coal royalties, and what is your plan to ensure more royalties come back to CQ?
The Leader of the Opposition has already spoken on this. LNP will not be changing the coal royalties where they are at right now. And I would like to point out that we will also instill the management guarantee of our coal-fired powered stations. The coal callide went down and the bills went up for our region. We've seen 19.9% increase in electricity costs right across Queensland, and some of our commercial businesses right here in our town that I've spoken to have incurred, almost 50% increase in their electricity bills. The LNP support our coal resource sector and will continue to do so.
Freddie, on the topic of coal royalties, what is your plan to ensure more royalties come back to CQ, and how important are these royalties?
I think I agree with Donna Kirkland. Through the climate change, a lot of big corporation, they want to take our money and they want to shut down our coals. When you think about India, China, what they're happening, we have a lot of coals and there's no problem. I think we like to keep the coal royalty, and I don't want to shut down without any emergency or disaster. I don't want to shut down any coal mines, and I want to keep it. Thank you.
Craig, on the topic of coal royalties, how important are they, and What is your plan to make sure they remain in CQ?
The coal royalties was a great initiative by the Labor government. We know that these royalties are a progressive royalty. So the miners only pay more royalties when their profits are higher. When the coal price goes up, our power price increases. So we will be using those royalties moving forward to subsidise our power bills as coal prices increase. It's very important that we support the community by getting back money for our resources that we own, which is coal in the ground, and it's supporting our power bills. Today we announced a program where we will ensure that power prices stay below the average market rate in Australia. It's very important to our community that we see this happen, because we know power prices are important for not only you and me at home, but also for our small business and manufacturing community. The Labor has very good plans to bring some of these funds back into our region. We've seen 68% of the budget that we released coming back to regional areas in Queensland, not to the southeast corner. If I'm re-elected, I will fight to get more money into this community. I will fight to get those social houses that we spoke about earlier. I've fought to get a satellite hospital for Rockhampton. I've fought to get a high school for Gracemere, and I will fight to get as much as we can to make sure our community is great into the future. Thank you.
David, what's your view on coal royalties, and what's your plan to ensure more royalties come back to CQ?
Well, One Nation clearly supports coal. Coal's here to stay as far as we're concerned. And we need to find a balance. We can't just strip the guts out of it like what the Greens would like to do, because that's impractical. It will shut the industry down. So again, we need to go back and find a balance. How we do that, I'm not too sure, but we'll definitely find it if elected. Now, like I said, coal is here to stay. If we keep going down the path of shutting down the coal industries and keep going towards renewables, you look at any country where renewables in percentages have increased, their cost per kilowatt have also increased. So like I said, coal is here to stay. Thank you.
Mick, on the topic of coal royalties, how will you fight to make sure more coal royalties come back to CQ?
So in the last 10 years, we've given away about $500 billion to export profiteers while giving them billions of dollars of taxpayer-funded subsidies on the state and federal level, while they've channeled massive donations to the big parties, while politicians from those big parties have gone on to the boards of directors and lobbying groups that work for coal and gas companies. We're told that coal is the source of our prosperity in central Queensland. The source of our prosperity in central Queensland are coal miners, nurses, teachers, construction workers, the people who actually do the work, not the billionaire weirdos who profit and skim off so much money. If we expand our mining operations for critical minerals for renewables, there's another $500 billion of revenue up for grabs over the next period. And the proposal currently is to privatise it and give it away. Our gas is going offshore at a shockingly low royalty rate. It's being sent to Japan, and it's now been proven they just resale a lot of it with an extra price on the top. The resources ministers that oversaw those dodgy deals went on to sweetheart contracts in the gas lobby. Multiple Labor politicians, multiple LNP politicians have taken that route. This is not good for coal miners. The day will come when reality sets in, at which point we'll see what happened as we did in the GFC. Those billionaires will lay off thousands, if not tens of thousands of workers in our region. Labor and the LNP will shake their fist and then shake the hand for the next donation, and we will be left behind. The Greens' proposal is to have a public mining company to channel those funds for those new mining projects into central Queensland and other regional centres. We want to raise royalties to 35%, including for gas. It's shocking that we're not talking about raising the royalties for gas in particular. That revenue goes straight back into our policies, including a public bank and establishing a public mining company, which would ensure that a vast sum of that policy go back into prosperity for Queensland and fund the transition that is desperately needed for our workers to get them into manufacturing and mining jobs that can last through the crisis. Thank you.
Margaret, on the topic of coal royalties, should they go up, down or stay the same? Considering a large percentage of our population in CQ relies on mines being successful, what is your plan to ensure more royalties come back to CQ?
Thank you. As we've heard, the coal royalties are pretty well baked in, no matter what colour government we have at the level they are. What I'm intrigued with is the number of signs around that tell me the number of things that those coal royalties are paying for. One would swear that every kindergarten teacher, now it's the energy bill rebate, everything seems to be based on what was a windfall for a couple of years of very high levels. Now, I've done government budgets. You do not use windfall income that you're not going to get next year or the year after to fund ongoing operational expenditure. You use it to fund a once-off project that you're not going to need to do the next year. And I figure that was probably Cross River Rail. I think the evidence is that money doesn't come back to central Queensland at anywhere near the level it should. That's why I'm standing as an independent candidate. That's why we need someone who's not going to be forced to take a whole of Queensland point of view. I will stick up for this community to get that money back here.
The next topic is on the next question is on the topic of climate change and emission reductions. Both the LNP and Labor have legislated 75% emission reductions by 2035. Is this legislation achievable, and what will the impacts to our region be? What is your view, and how is it attainable? I'll start with you, Freddie.
Yeah, the climate change is one of the biggest topic at the moment is happening around the world, especially in World Economic Forum. In 1965, a lady called Rachel Carson, she wrote a book called The Silent Spring. And that is actually movement actually start for climate change. And currently, a lot of multi-billionaires, they spend a lot of money on renewable energy. So they want the money get back. So that's the reason they're definitely working on to shut down all this minings and everything. So in the name of climate change. And actually, I actually ask a lot of environmental scientists, those who study from Stanford University, Harvard, Princeton, because recently they have a big meeting in India. And majority of them, they don't believe that the climate change, because every 200 years, 300 years, there's some sort of a variation has happened. That doesn't mean I don't I really love to protect the environment, beaches, and we need to look after the marine life and everything. I'm really concerned about the earth. But this climate change is basically multi-billion-dollar companies. They invest a lot of money in renewable energy. So they want to make sure the money is they invested they want to get the in return back. So they're slowly changing policies to change through the climate change, through the environment policy. So in my opinion, we don't need to worry too much about climate change. The Mother Nature will look after themselves. Thank you.
Craig, what is your view on this legislation on the topic of climate change, and how is it attainable?
I'm a believer of climate change, as are vast majority of experts around the world. Labor has our renewable energy and jobs plan. This isn't just about creating the renewables that we need to reach those targets. It's about creating the jobs of the future. We know around the world there are several economies now that are majorly relying on reliable renewables, and there's a decline in the need for thermal coal into the future. So we need to plan for those new jobs. Where are they going to come from? They're going to come from manufacturing. They're going to come from building and maintaining renewable infrastructure. This is a very important thing we need to do for our environment, for our kids, and for our future. Nobody wants to see our climate destroyed, and we all want to make sure that our kids have the best future possible. And I think that Labor's on the right track with our renewable energy and jobs plan. Thank you.
David, what is your view of the legislated 75% emissions reductions target by 2035, and how is it attainable?
One Nation has a pretty clear stance on renewables. They have their place, but at the rate that they're going, it's too much. 75% by 2035 is going to cost us a significant amount of money, which will then relate to your power prices. Who's going to pay for it? You are. Now, you've got to remember, CO2 is a life-living gas. If it drops below 0.003%, which we're pretty close to right now, all plant life on this planet will start to die. This is science, this is fact. Now we're at, 0.004%, something like that. So we're pretty damn close to the point where we're going to be in trouble. Now the whole agenda of trying to get to 75% emissions reductions to net zero, to 75% by 2035 is impractical and we're not going to achieve it. So we're not for it. We actually want to get rid of it completely. We want to get coal power stations up and running and working at full capacity so we can bring down your energy prices. And we also want to, in the future, invest in nuclear, which is clean, safe, and reliable. And if you look at the cost per kilowatt over the life of the project, it is significantly cheaper than wind or solar projects throughout the lifespan. It is not, like I said the other night, I've done the research, have a look on my Facebook page, the information is there. The waste from what? Nuclear. You can ask your questions later, sir, but in terms of nuclear waste, we dig it from the ground, it's naturally radioactive. Why don't we use the product, have cheaper power prices, and then find somewhere suitable to store it? Your question is pointless. If you want to talk about wind and solar, what are we going to do with all these toxic composite blades when they've come to the end of their lifespan? What about all the solar panels that are full of toxic chemicals, and the same with batteries?
Mick, where do you stand with 75% emissions reductions, and how is it attainable?
Firstly, folks, I'm just going to summarise the Greens policy for the future of Central Queensland, and it's the only party with a plan for the future of Central Queensland. Thermal coal is on its way out. Metallurgical coal, we've got an opportunity because we don't have to phase it out yet, but it's already being replaced in Europe. People are using hydrogen as a reductant, and in the United States, they've been fabricating steel without coking coal in some regions for years, for decades, in fact. So we have to see the writing on the wall and make sure that we're actually making the plans that support workers in Central Queensland. So we want to phase out coal, including metallurgical coal. Well, we can do it by guaranteeing long-term jobs and income for coal and gas workers because they don't have a long-term prospect right now. This guy can make up whatever he wants off of Facebook, but reality is going to come knocking on the door. And when those billionaires, including the ones who claim to be invested in nuclear, in renewable energy, when they see those results, they'll knock us out. They'll lay us off, okay? So we want to invest $65 billion in new publicly owned renewable storage and grid upgrades, achieving 100% renewables by 2030, and we will cut power bills by $531 per year because the reason power bills are going up is the LNP privatised our power market all over the country, driving blatant profit-taking and other dysfunctional behaviour. Even in Queensland, where Labor went half and half, our Ergon is forced by legislation to match the profit-taking of the private sector to a degree. We've managed to pressure them into some progress just in the last couple of weeks on having a more competitive public power option. What we've got to do is face reality. We can put that revenue of the new mining boom into our resources, into our communities. Nuclear power is shockingly expensive and there is no permanent place to store nuclear waste anywhere in the entire world. We've been using it for decades. We don't want to go down that path. It's a stalling tactic. We need real green manufacturing jobs in Central Queensland. We're proposing manufacturing hubs for Central Queensland. I proposed a wind farm factory for Stanwell at the last state election. We can fabricate steel, we can process our minerals, and we can build the jobs of the future. Thank you.
Margaret, on 75% emissions reductions, what is your view and how is it attainable?
I'm not a climate change denier. I believe the science is inexact, but there is science there and we need to do what we can. If there are things that we can sensibly do to reduce our impact on the planet, but we will need a rich tapestry of energy sources going forward, and a part of that will be coal. I'm very sceptical of the way that people set targets, and it seems to me that they then cook the books to make it look like we met them. We need meaningful things that we can do, meaningful alternatives as well. I never thought I'd say this, but I suspect nuclear at some point will be a part of it. We do need to use solar, we need to use wind, but I have seen some appalling images of what those developments are doing to our agricultural land here. They shouldn't be waved through, they should be put through the same rigorous process that any other development would be, particularly when it's on our rich agricultural land. So let's do what we can and look at a range of energy options moving forward.
Donna, what is your view on the topic and how do we make it attainable?
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for being so patient tonight. The LNP does not support the Renewable Jobs and Energy Plan in its current state. It is that we should approach things very considered and measured approach. And we see with the Pioneer Bertigan Hydro Project, $24 billion with the current Palaszczuk Miles Labor government with absolutely no business case. The LNP government will not support and will not continue with that project. We need a level playing field with our renewables rollout, so we need to have the same development conditions as our agriculture sector and our mining sector. Currently, that rollout is done by a code assessment. It is not impact accessible to our communities. We need to make sure that we deliver a affordable and reliable baseload energy. In order to do that, we need to continue to look towards the future of all reliable sources of energy. Thank you.
And next question is on the topic of small business. We've seen a lot of small businesses close over the past few years due to rising costs of operating. What will you do to support local businesses in our region? Craig, I'll start with you.
Well, as Tom said, we've had a bit of an issue with some of our small business of late. A lot of that is obviously to do with inflation, some high power prices, which we're addressing, and obviously some freight costs. Since the war in Ukraine, we've seen the freight route change to go around the west of Africa, and all of our freight prices have increased. One thing that Labor government is doing very well is the plan we announced today. The one where we'll make sure that our energy prices are below the national average.
Test 1, 2.
Thanks, mate. So power prices will be below the national average. We're also setting up a public-owned entity to compete with Ergon in our regions. This may sound a bit funny, but at the moment, we were speaking before about Ergon having restrictions on what they can do, how much profit they have to charge because of the national energy group. Because they are a monopoly, they have these restrictions. So when we open up a second entity, it means that those restrictions are removed, and both Ergon and the new entity can offer cheaper pricing for everyone. It'll be a 6% decrease for everybody's power bill and around 11% for businesses, which will be great to help our small businesses out in the community. Thank you.
David, on the topic of small business, how will you help them in our local community?
I just want to start off by saying what Craig said about starting up a new entity in parallel with what we've already got, which is an existing government organisation called Ergon. Why would we do that? It's total nonsense. We're better off spending the money somewhere else, mate. Yeah, well, it's not going to work, is it? You can't have two competing government agencies controlling the power generation. It's nonsense. But anyway, so in terms of small business, I'm a small business owner, and I'll tell you what I'm impacted by: the cost of power and the cost of gas. I own a small laundromat in Wandle called the Drop Bear Laundromat. Bit of Australian humour there for you. And my energy costs have gone up significantly over the last few months. Probably the last year or so, I wouldn't say quite doubled, but we're definitely getting there. It could be more people are using the laundromat, but I look at the cost per kilowatt and the cost per kilojoule of gas usage, and it has increased in a significant way, which is affecting me as a small business. So a few things that we can do is obviously get energy prices down to allow businesses to come back to Queensland and actually manufacture goods, etc. And also, I think we need to get rid of the payroll tax on small business. I think that's unfair. And again, as a small business owner, I think it's appropriate that we get energy costs down, which also include fuel costs. Thank you.
Mick, on the topic of small business, how will you advocate to help them in our local area?
So Michael Berkman in Brisbane has been campaigning for years to abolish the payroll tax on small businesses and medium-sized entities. It's quite bizarre that we complain about charging too much royalties to massive mining corporations, and then it's middle-class people, small business owners, and anybody who charges the GST has to make up the difference and support our schools and hospitals. Small business owners are also being affected by things you wouldn't expect, like childcare. People can't find workers to roster because it's more expensive to keep the kids in childcare than it is to actually get paid to work in a small business. And there's a campaign going around, you can see it online, small business owners in remote communities talking about this. Our proposal has been to build a public childcare system for some time, early childhood education being a vital part of that, but that will have a very positive dividend for small business owners. Price of power is due to the privatisation of the power market, and I agree we shouldn't have two public energy retailers, we should have a public energy provider. We shouldn't be making money off a public good, and that would maximise the savings, including for small business. We can't do that by trying to manage the dysfunctional system that the LNP put us in, which is mainly about profit taking for some of their mates. It's about having infrastructure that supports small business. I'll also note medium-sized enterprises benefit from our public factory program for renewable energy because they'd be the ones providing the inputs into those factories. If we have the publicly run factory here and the mid-sized enterprises building up and getting support to grow, that makes it more favourable for investment as well. So there's ways we can support small business. Also, the cost of living is biting small business. As long as Coles and Woolies and landlords are gouging people, they don't have the money to spend in small business. It's absolutely vital we address that as well. Thank you very much.
Margaret, how do you look to support local business in the community?
Thank you. And this is something that's been dear to my heart the whole time I was Mayor, and many of you will remember things like Smart Hub, which was my initiative, my research that led to that, Advance Rockhampton, which I put on the table. Councillors wholeheartedly supported. Our officers worked out how to deliver it, and they've done a mighty job. When COVID hit, Rockhampton Council went above and beyond to support our small businesses. We showed the way and other councils followed. And of course, in terms of leading our push into the mining industry, as Mayor, I gathered a cohort of small businesses, and we went up to QME and let the mining industry know that we were open to business, and thereby began a story. But going forward, I have consistently pushed for a special economic zone for our community. They'll give us all the reasons in the world why they can't do it. Let's be a pilot project, which is what you do as an excuse to do something special for somebody. We need to have tax concessions. We need to see what can happen in a regional community when government makes some special concessions and special rules for them. I've also been advocating for a state development area at Stanwell for a very long time. State development areas direct government attention to land in your area, and when businesses knock on the door at George Street saying, "Where will we go?" that is where the government puts them. That is why Gladstone has done so well. We need one of those. What we need is affirmative action for the regions before market forces have totally killed us.
Donna, how do you think we can help a small business in the local area?
My husband and I are small business owners of over 30 years, and we've had businesses around the state, Brisbane and Emerald, Yeppoon, Gladstone, up in Airlie Beach even, but here in Rockhampton as well. And talking to business owners right across the region, it is constant that we hear the words, get rid of the red tape. So we hear every year, we hear the government talk about getting rid of the red tape. I'm excited that the LNP government have actually this year dedicated a role to an employee who will have one job, and that is to delete or remove, I should say, red tape. So wherever possible, that is what their task is. It is the red tape task for them to do. I'm also excited that we will have the one-stop shop for small businesses. It is a concierge where you and a small business under $1.3 million in revenue, you'll be in that turnover, you'll be able to call up instead of having to call this whole raft of different services and try and solve your one problem. You'll be able to call one person, they will look after you. We will also have, for those businesses over $1.3 million, a business relationship manager. They will be locally based, and that person who is locally based will make sure that they seek you out when there are changes to government legislation, when there are things that you need to know about, but also more importantly, again, to save businesses time, to save businesses the hassle of trying to navigate the labyrinth of policies and changes to those policies. They are going to have that personal business manager available to you right here in your region.
Freddie, how do you think we can help small local businesses in the area?
So I just want to clarify the gentleman talk about the waste. I know that a lot of in Somalia, Indonesia, there's a lot of people actually dumping the waste and they never talk about it. They talk about the carbon tax. Anyway, come back to the business. I am a capitalist thinker, and I really believe that the society, the country will grow if we have a capitalist mindset. We need a business, and also we need to give a lot of encouragement those who are running a business. Example, if some people have employing 100 people, so what they're doing that they are looking after 100 families. So in government actually need to consider how we can promote and more business and engage more business. So otherwise the socialist way of thinking, it doesn't work. I think the current policies, I prefer like LNB policies, some of the policies are right, but we need to more opportunity for business. And if there is no business in this community, the country will get the poor and a lot of crimes and a lot of things going to happen. The nation prosper and everybody prosper. So I like to have how to reduce the tax, how they contribute in the society. So sometimes people are too greedy. So a business owner, how he contribute to the society. So that can actually vary and different, and they can give some deduction on the tax. So that's the way we can actually increase more business in the community. And thank you.
I appreciate your patience, everyone. We are up to the last question. If you're a member of a major party, how do you aim to have an influence within your party to get better results for the area? Or if a minor party or independent, how do you negotiate with the government at the time? Who are we up to? David. We'll start with David.
Communication, plain simple. You communicate your needs, we discuss, we have an outcome. That's it. What else do you do? Plain simple. Thank you.
Mick, how do you aim to have an influence to benefit the local community?
So, folks, I've been in the Queensland Greens a few years now, and it's difficult being a regional Green. It's very challenging, particularly in a state like Queensland where, frankly, due to the generosity and sacrifice of members and supporters statewide, we've had extraordinary results at recent elections. I'll be continuing to campaign inside the Queensland Greens to get better support for campaigning in the regions, because the most important thing you can do to a politician, if you want them to do what you want, is to pressure them. It is to push them. It's all well and good to be nice to them and have nice chats, and there's nobody more capable of doing that than our teams in Canberra who've been working behind the scenes for many years. We've got a two-word slogan in the Queensland Greens: pressure works. That's why our team in federal government in recent times, or federal really the real opposition in recent times, has gotten billions of dollars of concessions to help with the housing crisis. We've been pushing for the policies that Labor's now adopting at the 11th hour, admittedly, including a desperately needed 1% cap on rent prices. We campaign, we put pressure, and when people don't listen to us, we take the seats off them. That's the Queensland Greens model. Now, it's challenging being in a party like that, as you can imagine, but I'm keeping faith with the people involved because I know some of them. I remember when we formally banned corporate donations to the Queensland Greens. For decades, it was out of bounds, committee standing orders disallowed it. We had a workshop about it, and there was me and a young Green from Brisbane going back and forth explaining to people you can't take corporate donations, no, not even the nice people, okay? That young Green is now the federal member for Griffith. He had big plans to get elected, but he was campaigning inside the party to ban corporate donations he would need or could fund his campaigns. That's the kind of integrity we're talking about, and that's how you make a real difference. If you let lobbyists in the room, you run out of steam very rapidly. If you stand firm and organise in the community, that's when we get real results. Thank you very much.
Margaret, as an independent, how do you plan to negotiate with the government of the time to get better results for the region?
Thank you. One of the advantages I have is that I have been around government and I have a good understanding of the process of government. Certainly independents have to do things differently. We have to be more collaborative. We have to be able to stand our ground when we need to and work for our community. But we constructively work across party lines. An independent can call things out, no matter who they are in a party after a couple of years, instead of being able to speak the truth about what's going wrong at the hospital or what's not working with our education system, they become defensive. An independent can work and call things out and get change. I'm 100% committed to our communities and 100% answerable only to you. I haven't accepted donations of any kind, so I'm entirely self-funded. And independents have a track record of being very successful for their communities, of achieving things for their communities and being re-elected. This is definitely a season for the independent. I think people have really seen a lot that they don't like in the way parties operate. It's not going to be easy. The parties certainly don't make it easy for an independent, but I'm resilient and we need independents like me to get into Parliament to break that stranglehold that the parties have had over our future.
Donna, as a member of one of the major parties, how do you plan to influence to get better results for our region?
Well, I've been out in the community for the last 12 months and I've worked very, very hard to get all of the shadow ministers, as many shadow ministers as I possibly could, up here into the regions to hear of the needs of the regions, to experience firsthand what it is that the community as a collective are calling for, not one individual voice calling out in the wilderness hoping to be heard, but the community at large. They are very supportive of the voice of their candidates, very supportive of the members of the party when they get up to speak. They are going to be supportive of we always, LNP is supporting community, and we encourage and welcome opinions and voice of that community. I will represent this community with the same tenacity that I have continued to represent them just in this last 12 months, making sure that those shadow ministers know what the needs of Central Queensland are. More to that point, we have got awesome candidates in our Keppel candidate Nigel Hutton and in our Morani candidate Glenn Kelly. And when we join together, we will be like a triple braided cord that will not be easily broken, and we will bring that money that is currently going from the regions to the southeast Queensland. We will stand up and we will bring that money back here to Central Queensland as a powerful force, make no mistake.
Freddie, as a member of a minor party, how do you plan to negotiate with the government of the day?
This world actually run by trust, transparency, honesty and relationship. Sometimes we need to have a soft approach. So if the soft approach doesn't work, then we need to be aggressive. And so there is an intelligent quotient. We use some intelligent way to do that. And that doesn't work. We use the emotional quotient. So then that doesn't work. We use the social quotient, and that doesn't work. We use the adaptable quotient. So what the politician does that? What's their job? They are not doing their money. It's my money, it's your money. So I need to convince them I am here for Rockhampton. So this is the need in Rockhampton, and I am committed to serve these people. So I show my passion. I am not working for any party. I am working for Rockhampton. So if you believe in me, I give you guarantee we can actually change this country. This country is changed by, any country is changed by not politician, not LNB, not Labour, not Family First, or no any others independence. Those who got a true patriotism. I love this country, I love this region, and I want to bring some changes, and I am committed to do that. And if we show that passion, and if we show the zeal, and they need to do something. Otherwise, that will give a guilty feeling. And if you don't listen, we use a different approach. Sometimes in politics, people play dirty politics. Most people does a dirty politics, but I don't want to do a dirty politics. I will be honest and try to convince, and I fight hard, and I work harder than anyone else. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Craig, as a member of one of the major parties, how do you plan to influence to get better results for our region?
Oh, that's an easy one. I've been on various boards and committees in the Labor Party for many years, and I have lots of relationships with a lot of the ministers. They all know who I am because I've always campaigned hard to get things for our region, policy-wise. And, we didn't secure the Gracemere High School commitment by accident. That was a lot of hard work talking to ministers. Same with the satellite hospital. Brittany Lauger and I campaigned hard with our ministers, and I will work hard for this community. I will campaign hard to the ministers at the time. I will be knocking on their doors. Whoever they are, they will know exactly who I am. And if I don't have a big enough voice, I will work with other regional candidates in the same place, and we will campaign together and get the things that we need for this community.
Finally, I'm going to ask each of the candidates to come back up one last time and give 1 minute last-ditch pledge to why you should vote for them. We'll start with Mick.
Folks, we've been to 3 different candidates forums in the last 3 days, and before that the Capricorn Conservation Council put on an excellent event as well that myself and Craig attended. I just spent the last year working on the problems with the renewable energy rollout in a non-partisan capacity with that Conservation Council. It's incredibly frustrating to see such a vitally important issue being mismanaged by the government of the day, and it's incredibly challenging to bring that to a regional community and to challenge preconceptions about the party and about our role in local politics. All I can tell you is that we are miles ahead of the other parties in terms of our communication with the people who are working hard to support our community. Our ability to listen and to actually deliver policy is not compromised by the dysfunctional antics of big party politics. And it's that difference and our commitment to community campaigning which I believe will change the future of our region. It's a long road, it's a challenging road, but it's something we have to do because our alternative is far too dire. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My agenda is future looking and 100% focused on the communities of Rockhampton and Gracemere. What we are seeing more and more is that the survival of the regions is a competition of region against region. We watch as health services, police numbers, railway jobs are dispensed as election promises to other communities, and the jobs that we so desperately need are sent elsewhere. I'm not aligned with either party. There is no deal that would see me vote against your interests on the floor of Parliament. I will protect our health and education services. We've got a lot of ground to make up. I want to open new opportunities for our young people in education, and I want to future-proof our jobs. I want to care for the things that mean a lot to Rockhampton and Gracemere. I bring a wealth of experience with runs on the board. I have a strong academic background and experience in policy making. I have proven to be resilient, and I know I will need it if you honour me as your independent in Parliament.
I would like to ask everyone in the room, do you actually feel that you are better off today in your community sitting around your kitchen table with those discussions than you were 10 years ago? LNP have the right plan for Queensland's future. We will bring you safety where you live, health services when you need them. We will respect your money by delivering projects on time and on budget. And we will help to build 1 million homes by 2034. And we'll give everyone a place to call home. A government that works for you is what the LNP will be. And I'm proud to be part of that party, and I look forward to representing this community with everything that I have in me. Thank you for coming out tonight and for listening to us. Thank you so much for exercising your democratic right. In 2024, let's show Labor the door.
I know that I am the weakest candidate in this compared with all this candidate, but if you give me a chance, I will demonstrate the true nature of a public servant you never experience in your life. Because my style is different, and I want to bring the servant leadership, transparency, trust, also based upon Christ's teachings. And I really believe that. People underestimate me. When I was in uni, I created a plan about putting photos on a website and selling, getting some reward. Nobody believed me because I have a problem with English and everything. And later that idea, someone took it and they turned into an iStock business, turned into a multi-billion-dollar business. So I have a plan. I have an online creative portal so I can access, I think about how I can access 30,000 people. So I'm a strategic planner. I have a weakness. I use my little brain to hire the best brain and accomplish the job, and you never experienced in your lifetime. Thank you.
Let's be clear. This election is about who do you want as your party to run the state. Chances are the smaller parties aren't going to be able to form government in their own right, and an independent won't have any say at all. Your choice is between Labor and the LNP. The LNP, who are telling us they're going to lower taxes, they're going to lower debt, but have $10 billion worth of unfunded promises. So where's that money going to come from? Historically, would tell us it's going to be cuts to health, cuts to education, cuts to public servant jobs. Or you've got Labor who's actually got a plan to deliver cost of living relief with energy rebates, a community safety plan that's providing additional police support for victims and investing in evidence-based programs to prevent crime before it occurs, providing better healthcare close to home by investing in a satellite hospital for Rockhampton, 32-bed maintenance facility, and so on. Thank you.
So I got 60 seconds, eh? Right, here goes. One Nation is a party of the people, for the people, and I will act accordingly as well. We're not here to mess around. The Labor Party and the LNP, they've had their go, and look at what they've done to the country. We need change. Everybody's looking for the change, and every single One Nation candidate that I've come across so far has been exceptional. They are a fantastic bunch of people, and I'm very excited to get your vote. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our forum this evening. I just want to thank everyone involved. It's not easy to put these things on, so everyone involved, thank you so much. We do have the Keppel one tomorrow night at the Appleton Town Hall starting at 6. And just lastly, I do want to thank the outgoing member for Rockhampton, Barry O'Rourke. No matter what side of the aisle that you stand on, I think it's always important to recognise the outgoing member, and it's not an easy career path that these guys are about to go down, one of them anyway, and we certainly wish them all the best, whoever that is. Thank you very much.